people often ask about the name Lefal. How did you get that name? Did you come from Louisiana? No. This is what we were told, that there was a French plantation owner by the name of Leffall who was said to be from the region of Nice, France, who went to Alabama and bought a group of slaves from a man named Bull near Tuskegee, Alabama. And so therefore you took the name of your owner, so they were called the Leffall slaves. Then after the Civil War, they went to East Texas, to Marshall, Texas, to the Farrar plantation, F-U-R-R-A-H, because it was thought that there they could harvest their crops and that people would take notice of, and they could get really the type of, should I say, reward, the type of monetary gain that they thought they deserved for having worked so hard. Now, having said that, and they'd gone to East Texas, to Marshall, Texas, Calvin and Holly Leffall were my great-great-grandparents. They had 3 sons, Calvin, William, and Jackson was called Jack. And Jack was my great-grandfather on my father's side. He married a woman by the name of Elvenie, and they had 1 son named Calvin. Calvin was my grandfather on my father's side. His mother died shortly after he was born, and she, after she died, her husband then, Jack, married another woman, and he had 17 children with her. But my grandfather was by this one woman, Elvenie.
17
children. But that was the other wife. Now, Calvin later met a woman in East Texas near Marshall named Ella, and he married her. Now, I don't have the exact years of the time that they were born, and I know much more about my mother's family than my father's family, because every summer my sister and I would go to Alabama to spend time with my mother, but I'll say a little bit more about that a little later. Calvin and Ella Leffall had 13 children. 2 boys died shortly after birth. My father was the 4th child, born December 5th, 1899, and the oldest was the one girl, my Aunt Beulah, who lived to be 100. So that's on my father's side. So we can go back to around around just before the Civil War. I mean, really before that time, because of the fact that we know that my great-grandfather, Jack Leffall, was born in 1850.
You've put, obviously, a lot of work into getting all this information.
That's true. My sister, who's a librarian and someone who's interested in genealogy, studied this. She went back and went to a lot of the census materials in Alabama and Texas to try to get this information. And she found that on my mother's side, my great-grandfather was a man by the name of Paul Moore. He was owned by a Gabriel Moore. And when Gabriel Moore's daughter, Lucy Jane, got married, she married a Dr. Fleming Jordan. It's spelled J-O-R-D-A-N, but all of those people called themselves Jordan, not Jordan, but Jordan. When she married Dr. Fleming Jordan, a physician, in Maysville, Alabama, the Gabriel Moore gave his favorite slave, Paul Moore, my great-grandfather, to his daughter as a gift. He then became Paul Jordan. Paul Jordan then met another slave who was owned by Dr. Fleming Jordan, who also happened to be Dr. Jordan's daughter by a slave on his plantation, and they got married. So Paul Moore became Paul Jordan, and he married Flora Jordan. Now, to that union, the Jordans, there were born 6 sons and 5 daughters. And one of those sons, Jeremiah Jordan, was my maternal grandfather. Now, my maternal grandmother, there was a woman named Ezell Mead, who was born in Jackson County, Alabama, around in the 1825, 1830 area. She had a daughter, Ezell Mead, had a daughter, and her daughter, she was the daughter, Ezell Mead was the daughter of Mariah Mead, and Ezell Mead was owned by a slave owner named Lem Mead. Lem Mead had another slave named Jeff Mead, so they had the same name because they're both slaves of Lem Mead. So Ezell Mead married Jeff Mead, both of whom were owned by Lem Mead, and to that union, that marriage, there were 4 daughters and 2 sons. My maternal grandmother, Callie, was one of those daughters. So you can go back before the Civil War, but we can come up to the time of my grandparents. Yeah, I can go further.
Why is that information so obviously important to you?
I really wanted to know what had happened to my forebears and why they were able to do what they did. And let me tell you what I mean by that. My grandfather, on my mother's side, Jeremiah Jordan, went to Normal, Alabama, to Normal Institute. He was the only one then who went there. It was called college then, but we think it was really more like high school. Maybe you finished high school plus a year. He was the one teacher in the one-room school and the one-teacher school in Alabama, where he grew up, near Flint, Alabama. He went to the Flint Baptist School. He was the one teacher there, just outside of Gurley, Alabama, between Gurley, Alabama, and Huntsville, Alabama, one-room school. There, he met a young, pretty wholesome student by the name of Callie Meade. My grandfather at that time was almost 32. Callie Meade was 16, but he was smitten with her. They got married, and they then had 9 children. They had 6 girls, or 6 daughters, 2 sons, and 1 son died in infancy. My mother's a twin, and she was next to the youngest. She was born April 17th, 1909. And my mother then went to the 6th grade, which was taught by her father. And she would help him teach. And after she graduated from the 6th grade, she herself was a teacher in a one-room school in Paint Rock, Alabama. I mention this because education has been such a major role in my life. And my father used to tell my sister and me this: with a good education and hard work, combined with honesty and integrity, there are no boundaries.